The woman sat by the window in the last third of the aircraft, seatbelt fastened, hands folded loosely in her lap. To anyone glancing down the aisle, she looked unremarkable. Mid-30s, dark hoodie, baseball cap pulled low, boots scuffed from long use. No rank on her shoulders. No midas. No hint that she carried anything heavier than a small backpack tucked under the seat in front of her. Her boarding pass read Reyes, but her orders were classified. Her past was buried deeper than the ocean she had once learned to breathe beneath. Around her, the military transport plane hummed with low conversation. Pilots rotating home. Intelligence officers headed to briefings. A few special operations personnel scattered quietly among the rows, each pretending not to notice the others. That was the rule. Don't ask, don't stare, don't connect dots. She followed the rule perfectly. When turbulence rattled the fuselage, she didn't flinch. When a loud laugh erupted 2 rows up, she didn't look. When a young lieutenant across the aisle fumbled with his gear, she leaned slightly to help, then returned to stillness as if she'd never moved. Her name, in another life, had been Lieutenant Commander Ava Reyes. In that life. Men twice her size trusted her with their survival. In that life. Enemies whisper call sign they feared more than airstrikes. Iron Fist. But here, at 35,000 feet, she was just another passenger heading home. The cockpit door remained sealed, but the radio. Chatter filtered faintly through the aircraft's intercom. Routine check-ins, weather confirmations, airspace clearances. Ava listened without listening, the way only someone trained to absorb information subconsciously could. Her mind drifted, as it often did when there was nothing immediate to react to. She thought of the ocean, of the crushing silence at depth, of the pressure that tested both body and will. Of the first time an instructor had told her, "You don't belong here." She had been 22 then, one of 2 women who made it past initial screening. The only one who would make it to the end. They said she was too small, too quiet, too female. They were right about one thing. She was quiet, but quiet didn't mean weak. The plane jolted again, harder this time. A few heads turned. The engines adjusted pitch. Ava's eyes lifted, alert now, scanning angles and exits without conscious thought. Old habits never died. They just slept out. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the flight deck. We've entered slightly rough air. Please remain seated. Calm. Controlled. Nothing wrong." She exhaled slowly. Then the radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't meant for passengers. A different frequency bled through. Urgent. Sharp. Military. "Eagle 2, do you copy? This is Falcon Lead." Ava's spine straightened. The pilots up front would hear it clearly. So would anyone trained to recognize that tone. "Falcon Lead, Eagle 2 copies. Go ahead." There was a pause. Static hissed. Then a voice came through that changed everything. "We've got an unidentified aircraft entering restricted airspace. No transponder." No response to hails. "Command wants eyes on immediately." The hum of the cabin shifted. Conversations died down. A few seasoned heads tilted, pretending not to listen while catching every word. Ava's fingers tightened slightly. This wasn't normal. The transport plane wasn't a fighter. It wasn't meant to be anywhere near an intercept scenario. But routes overlapped. Airspace was fluid. And sometimes, history decided to collide in unexpected ways. "Eagle 2, be advised, possible hostile intent. ROE pending." The word hostile changed the air inside the cabin. Ava closed her eyes for half a second. Not today, she thought. Then the radio spoke again. "Falcon Lead to all available assets. Requesting confirmation if Iron Fist is aboard the transport." Silence fell like a physical weight. Ava's eyes opened slowly. Around her, heads turned, confused, curious. Most had no idea what the call sign meant. A few did. The young lieutenant across the aisle frowned. 2 rows ahead, a man in civilian clothes stiffened. Near the back, someone whispered, "Did he say Iron Fist?" The cockpit didn't respond immediately. Ava leaned back at her seat. "Oh, that's how today's going to go." The radio crackled again, more insistent this time. "Transport Bravo 7, this is Falcon Lead. Do you have Iron Fist on board? We need confirmation." Ava didn't move. The flight crew hadn't been briefed. She knew that. Her presence was compartmentalized. Need to know. And right now, they didn't need to know, or at least they hadn't. A voice finally came back, cautious. Falcon lead, stand by. Murmurs spread through the cabin now. Curiosity overrode discipline. People craned necks subtly, scanning faces, wondering who or what Iron Fist was. Ava reached up and adjusted her cap, shadowing her face. Her mind, however, was already elsewhere. She remembered the operation that had earned her the call sign, that a desert night torn apart by rotor washed, a team pinned down, outnumbered, a decision that had to be made in seconds. She had moved forward when others hesitated. Not reckless. Decisive. Her fists hadn't been literal. They had been orders, precise, unyielding, impossible to ignore. Iron Fist. The radio burst alive again, sharper now. Bravo 7, command confirms Iron Fist is cleared to engage if necessary. We need her assessment. Ava sighed. Cleared to engage, she thought. From 35,000 feet. Fantastic. She felt eyes on her now. Not because anyone recognized her face, but because something in her posture had changed. Soldiers noticed those things. The still ones. The calm ones. She stood. The movement was unhurried, deliberate. As she rose, the aisle seemed narrower. The murmur stopped. She reached into her hoodie and pulled out a small, worn identification wallet. No fuss. No drama. She walked toward the front. A man stepped into the aisle, as if to stop her, then thought better of it. Something in her eyes made him move aside without a word. At the cockpit door, she knocked once. Hard. The door opened a fraction. A pilot's eyes met hers, then widened. Yes, he asked. Ava held up the ID. Lieutenant Commander Ava Reyes, she said quietly. Call sign Iron Fist. The cockpit went dead silent. The pilot swallowed. Did they ask for I heard, she said. Patch me in. He hesitated only a second before opening the door fully. As she stepped inside, the radio crackled again. Falcon lead, this is Bravo 7. Iron Fist is on board. There was a pause, then unmistakable relief. Copy that, Bravo 7. Iron Fist, this is Falcon lead. Permission to speak freely. Ava took the spare headset and slipped it on. This is Iron Fist, she said, voice steady. Go ahead. Every soul on that aircraft felt it. They didn't know why. I didn't know her story, but they knew authority when they heard it. Ma'am, Falcon lead said, we have a fast mover approaching restricted airspace. Unknown intent. Command wants your read. Ava closed her eyes briefly, visualizing vectors, speeds, behavior patterns. Send me telemetry, she said. Numbers streamed in her headset. She listened. She smiled, just slightly. That's not hostile, she said. That's panic. Silence. Explain Iron Fist. Lost transponder. Fuel imbalance. Pilot's flying scared, not aggressive. He's not angling for engagement. He's looking for an exit. The pilots exchanged glances. Falcon lead exhaled audibly. You're confident? I am, Ava replied. Shadow him. Give him space. He'll break off. A pause, then copy that. Minutes passed. The tension slowly unwound as the unidentified aircraft veered away, just as she predicted. Cheers didn't erupt. This wasn't a movie, but respect filled the cabin like oxygen returning after a dive. The radio crackled one last time. Iron Fist, good to hear your voice again. Ava removed the headset. She handed it back. Glad to help, she said. As she walked back to her seat. People watch her differently now. Not with fear, not with disbelief, with understanding. She sat down, buckled in, folded her hands again. Quiet once more, but the legend had woken up, and this flight would never forget it. The rest of the flight passed in near silence, but it was not the same silence as before. It was heavier now, layered with awareness. Ava could feel it without looking. People pretending to read, pretending to sleep, pretending not to steal glances in her direction. The quiet woman in the hoodie was no longer invisible. She didn't mind. Invisibility had always been a tool, not a need. As the aircraft descended, her thoughts drifted again. Not to the incident, but to the long road that had led her here. To the nights when quitting would have been easier. To the mornings when her body screamed and her mind had answered. One more step. She remembered Hell Week most clearly. Not the cold or the pain, but the moment she realized something important. Everyone else was trying to survive together, but she was learning how to survive alone. Not isolated, focused. While others drew strength from noise and encouragement, Ava drew hers from stillness, from control. That was when the instructors stopped shouting at her. They started watching. Years later, during her first deployment, that stillness saved lives. A coastal extraction gone wrong. Enemy movement where none was expected. Comms down. Chaos creeping in. Ava had stepped forward, voice calm, hands steady, and bent the situation back into shape through sheer clarity of command. When it was over, her team had stared at her like she was something forged rather than trained. Like getting punched by iron. One of them had muttered afterward. The name stuck? Iron Fist wasn't about force. It was about certainty. The plane touched down smoothly. Tires kissed the runway. A few passengers exhaled, tension finally releasing. As the aircraft slowed, the captain's voice came over the intercom again, this time warmer. Welcome home. Ava closed her eyes for a moment at that word. Home. As the seatbelt sign went off, movement returned to the cabin. People stood, gathered bags, resumed normal life, but something had shifted. A few service members nodded at Ava as they passed. Not exaggerated, not performative, just acknowledgement from professionals to one of their own. The young lieutenant paused beside her row. Ma'am, he said quietly, thank you. Ava looked up at him, really looked this time. He reminded her of someone she'd once been. Eager, unsure, carrying more responsibility than he yet understood. You'll do fine, she said, his eyes widened slightly. Then he smiled and moved on. She waited until the aisle cleared before standing. Slung her backpack over one shoulder. No escort, no ceremony. Legends rarely traveled with banners that ate the exit. One of the pilots stood waiting. He met her gaze and nodded once, deeply respectful. Good to have you on board, Iron Fist. She smiled faintly. Good flying. Outside, the air was warm. Civilian noises replaced engine hums. Ava blended back into the world as easily as she had left it, walking alone toward the terminal doors. The radio incident would become a story, then a rumor, then a quiet legend passed between squadrons and crews. A reminder that sometimes the strongest presence wasn't loud and the sharpest weapon wasn't visible. Somewhere in the sky, fighter pilots would remember the calm voice that cut through uncertainty. Somewhere on the ground, young women would hear the name Iron Fist and realize that strength didn't have a single shape. Ava Reyes disappeared in the crowd, but her impact stayed.